Welcome back to the show. I'm so grateful to be in the headquarters of Wolf here in beautiful New York City. We're looking at the Chrysler Building, and here with me is Caralie Chrisco. She is the program director at Wolf. Caralie, thank you so much for joining me, for allowing me to come to an office like this to film. I mean, this is just incredible. I don't know how you get any work done.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. We are so happy to have you, and thanks for having me.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about all the work you're doing here, helping companies build on Bitcoin and all these early startups and entrepreneurs that hopefully will help Bitcoin adoption around the world. But first, let's hear more about you. Where did you come from? How did you get to be doing what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm originally from Louisiana. I moved to New York right out of college and had a previous life as a talent manager for actors in theater, film, and television. And then in 2018, I switched into tech, which is where I met Adam Jonas, who's currently the CEO at Chaincode Labs, which is a Bitcoin research and development center here in New York. He became my mentor. He introduced me to Bitcoin. And so then in 2019, I joined him at Chaincode in sort of a recruiting, sort of HR capacity. And so just a little bit about Chaincode. It's a really special place where basically the best and brightest technical talent in Bitcoin and Lightning open source come together. And so it's usually a pretty small team. There's about 10, I believe, people working there now. And so during my time there, I started working on educational program development for Bitcoin developers. So we created the Chaincode seminar series, which was a remote series that we started in the thick of COVID, basically for developers who wanted to get interested in Bitcoin, didn't know where to start. We're going a little bit crazy in COVID. So we created that program. And then we were very involved in getting Summer of Bitcoin off the ground, and a program that was called Kala, now called Trust Builders, focused on developers who want to work in Bitcoin in Africa. So got really excited about program development. And then in 2021, Gemini was building out its open source grant program. And so I went over there with Jonas's blessing to head that up, build it out. And that was focused on individual contributors and also educational programs. And then in December of 2022 is when I joined Wolf as program director.
Wow. Okay. So you mentioned Trust. A lot of people that are watching this might be familiar with that because it is doing amazing work in Africa. Got lots of funding from maybe some famous people, right?
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure, yeah. So that's the fund that was started by Jay-Z and Jack Dorsey. And originally I was part of sort of a committee of people working in various open source companies that came together and sort of helped them create a process to select their board. So that's originally how I was involved with Trust. And then once the board was selected, then they started making goals and figuring out, okay, how can we grow adoption in Africa for Bitcoin? And so one of the things that they did was acquire Kala, which I mentioned. And now they totally fund this Trust Builders program that helps nurture open source developers.
Wow. Well, I remember being in Austin when Ross Stevens actually announced Wolf. And it sounded amazing. And now having visited and meeting a lot of the teams, it is super incredible and so needed for the space. So for people maybe not as familiar with it, tell us about Wolf and what you do with the teams here.
Yeah, absolutely. So Wolf, we are currently in our 5th program. We started in April of last year. And we are an accelerator program focused on businesses that build on Bitcoin. And so our typical program is 8 weeks long. And we take applications from all over the world. We have up to this point worked with 31 teams, and that equates to about 68 founders from 21 countries. So we're really proud of our global reach and just the variety of types of projects that people are working on. And so we work with companies that are anywhere from solo founder, I have this idea, to we've got customers, we've got revenue, but we want to scale, or we just want to get to that next phase. So the thought and the mission behind Wolf is to really empower builders in Bitcoin and set them up for success.
Coin Stories is brought to you by Bitdeer, where the power of Bitcoin mining is at your fingertips. As a publicly traded leader, Bitdeer's global reach and scale means they're everywhere you need them to be, ensuring you're part of the thriving Bitcoin economy. Bitdeer's not just mining, they are industry pioneers, and Bitdeer stands alone as the only vertically integrated, technology-focused Bitcoin mining company. What does that mean? Well, they're not just deploying, but developing the latest tech to make Bitcoin mining more efficient and effective. With the industry's most experienced leadership team, innovation is in their DNA, and it shows, with a quarter of their workforce dedicated to research and development, pushing the boundaries of what's possible in Bitcoin mining. Now they're leveraging years of expertise in data center and cloud management into high-performance computing through a recently announced partnership with NVIDIA. Join Bitdeer in reshaping the world of Bitcoin mining. Learn more at bitdeer.com and explore how they are pioneering the future today. Why do they need a program like this?
So I think that a lot of Bitcoiners, we tend to live in our own little bubbles and maybe sometimes can get caught up in building things just for Bitcoiners. And I think sometimes we have to marry the present and what's working with the future of Bitcoin to break into more of a mainstream. And so I think what Wolf really does a great job at is acknowledging and celebrating how important and impactful we know Bitcoin is and can be, with also arming people with very sort of classical, like, business skills. So I kind of think we're sort of the best of both worlds. It's like, we're cool, we get it, we're all about the future, but also like, here's the foundation in order to build a successful business.
It's interesting because I feel like Bitcoin, if you understand it, the network is so powerful and it gives so much hope for economic empowerment, but we really do need more use cases. Like there aren't enough companies that have really gained that sort of escape velocity to reach a ton of people around the world. And so, I mean, what's needed in order for companies in this space to thrive? Because we're not seeing that many big Bitcoin companies.
So I think something that has been really interesting that we've seen, oftentimes when companies come to us, they start with an idea and then they pivot a bunch of times. And then by the end of the program, which I should have mentioned, all of our programs end in a pitch event where we originally give teams an investment in exchange for equity. And then at the end of the program, they're exposed to other investors if they choose to raise additional capital. So I should have mentioned that.
So it's like Shark Tank.
Yes.
You guys are the sharks.
Yeah, exactly. But the wolves, So, going back to your question, I think something that's going to be really powerful are companies that don't sell themselves as Bitcoin companies, but Bitcoin is a reason why their product makes people's lives easier. So I think, with a combination of having founders who have sort of the Bitcoin ethos, it's very important to them to have it as part of the model. I think that's going to reach a larger audience, Bitcoin being a part of a product rather than the selling point. I think that's really going to help adoption.
What have you learned through working with these teams?
I have learned, I think my biggest takeaway is that if you're building something, you need to talk to as many people as possible and understand if what you're building is something that people want and people will use. Just because we think it's a cool idea or it's a cool piece of tech, that doesn't mean that it's going to be interesting to the market at large. So I think something that I really take away is like how important it is to talk to potential customers and talk to, if you're an entrepreneur, like have as many conversations as possible and approach them as, I want to learn from you as the customer and not let me tell you why you need this thing.
And there are some incredible people they've been learning from here. I mean, the fact that people like Ross Stevens are involved, and then you have speakers like Lynn Alden and Alex Gladstein. I mean, it's so incredible. But you did mention that a lot of the companies that come in, they end up pivoting. I've met some of the teams who were like, we thought this would work, and it totally didn't. We had to move to this. So what are maybe some common mistakes that builders make that if people in the audience are thinking about working in the space or becoming entrepreneurs that they could learn from?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I think going back to my biggest takeaway, I think, building things in a silo, spending many hours working on a product that you haven't proven there's product market fit. So I think having those conversations really, really early. I think the other mistake that people can make is, we always say that if you're not embarrassed by your MVP, you're doing it wrong. And so people think they need to build this amazing product that they're going to show to people once it's polished and ready. Mm-hmm. And that's really not what we've at least seen is the most successful way. It's like, get something that works on the surface, test it out with people, and then you can make it pretty later. So I think, that's something like just having the courage to get out there, I think, is something that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with at first, but not being afraid to show maybe a half-baked version of your idea to get feedback. Like getting feedback early is so important.
Totally. What kind of companies are you seeing? Like, are there a ton of people applying to try to have Lightning wallets, or do they want to work within mining? Or, I mean, I've met some people that want to do games involving Bitcoin. Is it a total mix?
It is a total mix. So it's all the things that you just said. I think our very first round of applications was very wallet heavy. I think that's sort of the easiest, I don't want to say easy, but I think that's like a very straightforward use case. So definitely wallets, mining, and we've gotten now into a pattern where we're seeing more AI projects.
Really?
So where there's an intersection with AI and Bitcoin. And then we did have some Noster projects in Pack 2 as well. So it's really sort of a mixed bag. And typically when we do, we'll usually have around 8 teams per cohort. And it's been really great because usually each team is working on something very different. And then they find many opportunities to collaborate with each other. So it's been a really nice thing to see.
It's time for a quick break to hear these messages from my partners who make this podcast possible. Next up, Bitcoin 2024, the world's largest Bitcoin conference, is coming to Nashville this July. Join us for 3 amazing days of keynotes, panels, networking events, and my Women of Bitcoin brunch. Head to b.tc/conference and use the code HODL for 10% off. Next up, Speed Bitcoin Lightning Wallet, one of the fastest growing Bitcoin wallets out there. Speed is a secure, low-cost way to send and receive Bitcoin instantly. Download Speed using the QR code on the screen or the link in my show notes. Next up, Coinkite. Coinkite makes everything you need to safely self-custody your Bitcoin, including the Coldcart Wallet. That's the cold storage device I use for safekeeping my Bitcoin. Head to their site in my show notes and get a 5% discount with promo code CoinStories. And finally, the why of Bitcoin is easy to grasp, but the how can be so confusing. The Bitcoin Way is a professional Bitcoin IT and security team offering personalized one-on-one support that guides you through cold storage, setting up nodes, inheritance planning, privacy best practices, and more. Set up your free 30-minute consultation today. All right, back to the show. That must be really exciting to work with the teams. I did notice throughout a couple of the cohorts, not a lot of women. Like, are women not building Bitcoin companies? And I have to mention, by the way, that I hosted a Women of Bitcoin brunch last year. We've got another one coming this year. And Caralie, you were one of the amazing panelists.
Oh,
and
thank you.
It's really inspiring when you see people like us, so hopefully inspire more women. But are there not a lot of women founders?
So, unfortunately, we have not seen a large influx of women founders. We have had amazing female founders, Desiree Dickerson, who you'll speak to, Darina, who's working on Slice. We've had incredible female founders come through the place. We have currently one on our HeatBit team. And so, it's been... it's a matter of the inbound applications. There hasn't been a huge amount of female founders. And even I want to say at the Women in Bitcoin brunch, I think the statistics around just the number of female entrepreneurs, it's like so staggeringly low. And so, I feel like, we've done our best efforts to get the like message far and wide. But I think, something that Darina and Desiree both have done, I think representation really matters. Mm-hmm. And so they've been really great about, being a public presence for their own companies. And then I think, then more women can start to see themselves in that role. And I think it's going to be a little bit of a slow burn, but I'm hopeful that like as we go through each cohort, like that the number of women will grow each time.
No, I think inspiration is the best way to drive more representation as opposed to picking someone just because they are whatever.
Totally,
right?
totally.
It's like if you see yourself in someone that you can relate to, hopefully that inspires more women, and then they see their colleagues or friends. It's a big hope for me as well. But so as far as this cohort, what's maybe different than the ones before? Because each one has to be unique, and if they're coming from around the world, is there like a theme that you guys go with every different cohort?
That's a great question. So I don't know that we necessarily have a theme. There's definitely a different vibe, from each. We kind of joke that sometimes it's a little bit like summer camp.
I bet.
Like adult summer camp.
In the nicest office in the whole world. I would love to go to camp here.
Yeah, it's a very nice.
Do you need any podcasters in your next cohort?
So it's really, I don't know that I have like quantitative measures, but I think each cohort, it's a different time of year. People tend to be at various stages. So, each cohort has their own personality, but I'm not sure that we, at least at this point, can, classify them by a theme or anything.
As someone who invests in Bitcoin and uses Bitcoin, what would you, like if you could invent an app, like the killer app for Bitcoin, what would it be?
I would want to create something that, I'm going to be super vague, but is solving so many people's problems and they have no idea that Bitcoin is even a part of it.
Really?
I think at first, that's how we're really going to have...
Trojan horse it.
Totally. Yeah. Because I think because of the, in certain parts of the world, there's negative connotation and so I think I would want to create something that is solving a global problem and they don't know it's Bitcoin yet. And then we tell them.
Well, I'm still surprised that not everyone has found this, but like I try to remember what it was like when I was starting, and it was confusing and intimidating, and I was super skeptical, and I try to put myself in those shoes, but sometimes when you're deep down the rabbit hole, it's like, how does everyone not get it and not want it because Bitcoin is a part of it?
I know. And I think just at a larger scale, it's, maybe trying both angles. I know, and I think it's a matter of being able to reach people and understand what they respond to. I was the same at first. I was very overwhelmed, but then once I, connected to just like Bitcoin as a tool for human freedom, like that's whenever I was like, oh, hell yeah, like this is awesome.
Is that what did it? Like what was the messaging and narrative that captured you in 2018?
So I would say that my main thing, the thing that initially drew me was how complex it was and how much there was so much to learn. Mm-hmm. I was coming from an industry that, and a place where it was like, this is how we've always done it. This is how we're going to do it, and I had gotten to a place in my own career where I'd really stopped learning. Mm-hmm. And so the thing about Bitcoin is I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know anything about money. And so then I would like go back and start, and I was just learning so much. And so that's what initially was really interesting to me. And then I think it was the Little Bitcoin book that I read, and I was like, oh, this is like another level. Like this is helping people's lives. So yeah, I'm in.
I always love hearing these stories because I feel like everyone has a different pain point. Everyone has a different medium or avenue that worked for them, whether it was a podcast or a book or a particular narrative surrounding Bitcoin, like human rights or freedom. So that's awesome. How do you get work done here?
It's very difficult. But on the cloudy days, it's like we're literally in a cloud. So that's head down.
That's amazing. All right. Anything else you want people to know?
No, I mean, I think, we are going to do a program at Wolf June 20th. And so it'll be a virtual session that is totally free to join. So if anyone is interested, the information will be on our website, wolfnyc.com.
Well, I hope more people in the audience get a chance to meet you. You're a breath of fresh air. It's been so nice to get to know you through the space. So Caralie, thanks for joining me.
Oh, Natalie, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Coin Stories. If you're listening on the Fountain app, you can show your support and share your thoughts by sending a boost. Last month's top episode on Fountain was with Peter Schiff. At Jay's boosted 10,000 sats and said, "We're sailing from Panama to Tahiti, and thanks to the digital world, I'm able to listen to your podcast and reply and boost it. It's amazing Peter talks about digital photos and doesn't get digital money." Oh, I agree. I love reading and replying to your boosts. So download Fountain on iOS or Android today and make sure you subscribe to Coin Stories. This show is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Nothing should constitute as official investment advice, and you should always do your own research. My inbox is open if you want to share feedback or guest suggestions. Just reach out at Natalie@talkingbitcoin.com. I'll see you next time.